things that I want to mention is some members think that because the state law has changed and recreational marijuana is coming, it's not here yet, but it's coming, that it's okay for them to participate.
Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon. Okay, welcome to the Triple P Podcast. Today is actually a day that we are down with the Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters, so the OAPFF. We're down at the Renaissance. We're doing this podcast all about medical marijuana, recreational marijuana in the workplace. The reason for this discussion is with those changes that happened on November 7th, we really wanted to dive into maybe a common message between the labor and the management and be able to talk about some of the concerns that not only the chiefs have, but also what the labor unions have. And I think they're all very, very similar. One of the things I'd like to point out with this is from the time that I mean, maybe it's happened before, but I'm not aware of it, is that the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association and the OAPFF has really kind of come together to kind of work on this to make sure that we're getting a common message out to our people. So to other area chiefs in the state association, but also trickled down to making sure it hits every single firefighter in the state of Ohio. Super important. So is super excited to have this conversation. I'm going to go around and do a little bit of introduction so we know who's all around the table here. And we're going to start over here with Mr. John Harvey, who is the state president for the Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters. So welcome, John. And if you want to, just kind of give a little introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on this podcast, and thanks for the partnership in this. I think it's really a historic event that these two organizations, who sole purpose really is to protect the firefighters in the fire service, that we're coming together to make sure we have a common message. So super excited to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. And, thanks for the hospitality. It's
Sure.
To invite us down here to be a part of this, to be able to see all your membership and also, sit around the table and just really kind of talk about a very important issue. So really appreciate it, John. And we'll jump over to Mr. Jack Roop, retired chief.
Retired chief, yes, absolutely.
Township, so.
Yeah. And the goatee, that's a retirement benefit. So, no, I'm very pleased to be a part of this. And working with the Ohio Professional Firefighters is I think, a great opportunity for the two organizations to come together. I think the first time that we came together, we've come together before, but one of the first significant things that we accomplished together was the passing of the cancer presumption law in the state of Ohio, where we work closely together with the legislator. And so here's another opportunity for us to benefit the firefighters and the organizations in the state of Ohio.
Well, that's that is a great follow-up as far as what the collaboration's been between the two groups. But I do want to point out that even though being retired, you're still very actively involved in the Health and Safety and Wellness Committee as far as the Ohio Fire Chiefs go.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm still chairing it.
Still chairing it.
Yeah.
So you could use some memberships that if anybody's interested in wanting to be a part of types of things to be able to help the health and wellness or safety of firefighters, that they just reach out to you to be a part of that, or?
Well, they go through the office, contact the office. They'll take the necessary information down, and then they'll forward that on to me. And we'll be looking for people that we've got different work groups. And so depending on, maybe a particular interest, whether it's, medical kind of issues or these kind of issues, and that we would try to align somebody with a work group.
Okay, thanks, Jack. We'll jump over here to Rick Volber, who is the Deputy Fire Chief of Akron Fire Department. So a little bit of introduction, Rick.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is a good conversation. Thanks for the hospitality, John. This is great.
Absolutely.
And I agree with Jack. This is a good partnership. We have worked before with the cancer legislation and, of course, the peer support legislation. And now we're tackling this topic, which is fantastic. And I think it's good to have both perspectives and just to help make sure all the members are taken care of.
Yeah, I agree. And so, just again, another topic that is, very, very important to the fire service. And we'll jump in to be able to kind of get some of your guys' expertise from maybe some of the different things. So I just want to just start by just having an open conversation about, what when we talk about recreational marijuana or medical marijuana, how does it impact the membership today? So what changed after November 7th for any firefighter in the state of Ohio?
I think one of the things that I want to mention is some members think that because the state law has changed and recreational marijuana is coming, it's not here yet, but it's coming, that it's okay for them to participate. And the answer is no, it's not okay to participate. You're in a safety-sensitive position, and our citizens and our communities expect us to show up and be appropriately ready for work, not intoxicated and no concerns. And I just want to make sure, and that's why we first started talking about this message, because people having conversations around the coffee table, deciding how many plants they want to plant in their yard and get ready for this recreational thing. And it's a problem for us. And we just want to make sure that nobody has any, we don't want, I think John said it best, we don't want a third party deciding the rest of our future. So just having these conversations and educating our folks is one of the most important things we can do.
Yeah, when we talked about when we talked during the preparation, and John did make that comment, it really resonated with me as well. That why would you want a third party to determine your fate and different types of benefits that may be available? Because if you've got injured or God forbid, a line of duty death or something, and they found this on a toxicology report, that would be detrimental. So I guess what kind of things and messages is the OAPFF? Are you guys putting out there, or have you talked about it?
Yeah, I think really to answer your question, what's changed, and that's nothing.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Most collective bargaining agreements have some aspect of drug testing, whether it be random, for cause, whatever. So our message is clearly that, hey, it's still a drug that you can't use and be a firefighter. So to your point, Chief, the day after it passed, I got people asking me, so we can start smoking marijuana? I'm like, no, absolutely not. Farthest thing from that. So, yeah, I think that's really why we felt this podcast was going to be so important, right? Make sure we're getting that message out, no matter what the law is and the firehouse lawyers say. You can't do it. The testing's not there. So anyway.
Yeah, I do agree. Go ahead, Jack.
No, I was going to say, I think the thing that everybody needs to understand is that there are benefits that we have, as public safety employees, and that's, workers' comp, the line of duty death benefits. And those benefits are at risk if you're using alcohol or marijuana or any of the scheduled drugs. And particularly, we've had some conversations through our legislative aide and our executive director with the Ohio Workers' Comp, and asked their attorneys that with the passage of the recreational marijuana legislation, how are they going to deal with it? Is it going to change? And they were very point on that they, right now, even with medical marijuana, have a code required notice of rebuttal presumption. And basically that rebuttal is that if you test positive with alcohol or a controlled substance, being marijuana, Schedule 1, that you as the individual, as the injured worker, you must provide documentation or proof that you weren't impaired as a result of that. And if you can't provide that, then you can easily be denied that claim by workers' comp, and you would have to end up and then go through your private insurance, through the department or something like that. And the same thing is partially true with the line of duty death benefits, and there's some question there about, whether or not, we've been told that right now that an autopsy is not required, and certainly an autopsy would have been the thing that would have provided that particular piece to the line of duty benefits that would exempt you from those benefits. So that, right now, if you're not sending them a a toxicology report or an autopsy, it may or may not be that situation, but it's there. It's in that policy that you can be denied that claim as well. And if you look at a couple of the different pods, or I shouldn't say podcasts, but if you look at a couple of the different blogs on the website, you can see where people have discussed the loss of those benefits based upon testing positive.
Boy, that would be extremely hard if it was put back in your boat to prove. So if I'm injured and I have a positive toxicology report that comes back, either it has alcohol or has a scheduled marijuana. Did you say Schedule 1 or Schedule 2?
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1. So Schedule 1, and then it says, so I'm automatically denied. Now it's up to me to make sure that I prove to them that wasn't the cause of the reason why I had this accident or dead or whatever the case may be.
And actually, if you go into the line of duty death policy at the federal level, they don't only talk about level 1 or Schedule 1. They talk about all the scheduled drugs and a maximum and minimums that could end up and deny those benefits.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we talked about family a lot too,
Right.
And so that can't be lip service for firefighters. You can't just have this lip service that, well, I do this for my family, because you hear that all the time. You know, I'm looking out for my family, but then then your actions aren't there for your family. You know what I mean? When it comes to those types of things, because when we are here, we have to be able to make sure we're providing for the family every single day. But then when we make those choices that might put us in a situation that doesn't leave them behind something good, then that's going to be a really tough thing. So I would hope that people are looking at their own families and say that, I'm not just saying it, that I actually really mean it.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that you mentioned, Jack, about Schedule 1 marijuana, they're currently looking at whether or not they've been asking Department of Justice to change marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. And I think there's a lot of conversation out there about, well, if they do that, then it's going to be okay. Well, that still doesn't make it okay. It means you have to have a prescription, and that's federal. The state law is different from the federal law right now, and certainly that's the federal law will supersede the state law where those things are concerned. But if it moves to a Schedule 3, then you're going to have a prescription. But that still doesn't mean it's going to be okay to participate as a safety-sensitive position in the fire service or as a first responder. So that still needs to be part of the conversation. No matter what happens at the federal level, you still have a job to go to, and you want to make sure you're taking care of your family, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't look at the use of marijuana the same as what like alcohol or anything like that would be. I mean, obviously we're not going to work impaired, or you're not going to work impaired, but you look at it as the same use because of the differences within those laws between state and federal laws.
Yes.
Yeah, BWC said that they weren't going to change, and when they had this posting about the rebuttal presumption, that they were going to treat recreational marijuana or any marijuana as the same they would with alcohol.
Okay. All right.
And that's kind of the way in having conversations when this was first coming about back in June or July last year, when it looked like it might change. I reached out to some Canadian police agencies that had policies, and some of them have policies that allow recreational use of marijuana off duty. They wouldn't share the policies. They're not under the same guidelines as we are in the United States, where you can ask for public records. However, they did say exactly that, Jack. They treat it the same, so it's impaired. For them, it's the fact that, are you coming to work? Are you impaired or not impaired? And I know there's some testing issues. Currently, if they're waiting to get an oral swab test, and they have to have 2 labs in the United States to be able to test to make sure that marijuana is narrowing that window, because right now it's roughly 30 days through a urine test or a blood test, but if through the swab they say it's down to 7, which will certainly change some of the things that deal with drug testing and that kind of thing. But right now the testing is what it is, and that's the urine test, and that's a 30-day window. And that's problematic. So intoxicated, you may not be intoxicated, but you've participated in the last 2 weeks, it's going to show up in your system. And that's where the liability is for the cities and for the townships.
And that's where the point of you don't want a third party to be determining it, you know.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to continue to use that John's famous, words.
It's not
of
patented.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do want to jump over to you, John. Though I want you to talk about. Have you heard about it? As far as you talked a little bit about the contract stuff, but do you expect as future contracts go that this topic's going to come up quite a bit in different areas, or what's your pulse on that?
Yeah, I would say is the testing changes. The law is subject to change again. Who knows what they're going to do in Columbus? That's anybody's guess. But I think really at this point, the focus needs to be on the education and just kind of really what we started this thing with and that's the saying no. And I think it's subjects like this are exactly why about every contract I ever negotiated has a labor management clause in it. So, take advantage of those avenues so that labor and management's on the same page with this stuff and we know, exactly what the expectation is of our members, and that's just stay away from it because whatever your beliefs is or whatever you read on the internet, again, that third party is going to decide your fate if you decide to make some bad decisions.
So open communication, keep open
Sure.
communication between labor management within your firehouses, union presidents and other, leadership company officers and fire chiefs and other individuals that have, a seat at the table. Just need to have an open transparency conversation about this to really, make sure that everybody knows first and foremost that it's a zero tolerance. It's a safety sensitive position. It doesn't change anything. November 7th never changed anything for the fire service. And that's the number one message that needs to be out there. Let's talk about resources though. And let's talk about resources that are available for, the individual that gets injured on the job or injured, doing whatever outside of the job. They can come to you and say, well, what's the difference of me making, getting injured and then given fentanyl or giving some other narcotic to be able to take and manage my pain. And so individuals find themselves that, they've used it for a long period of time. That becomes an addiction thing or could possibly become an addiction thing. So I want to talk about that. And I also want to kind of talk about what other resources are available if the individual is already having some issues with even just marijuana because, individuals could be already that we don't know about.
So I think one of the things that you brought up and John brought up with policy and making sure that your contract language is strong, having both of those strong and making sure everybody understands both the policy and your CBA really helps with this. But to refer back to your question, and I don't know if it's in all contracts or in all policies, but if an employee's having an issue and steps forward and says, hey, I need help, most agencies are going to give them the help that they need. So coming forward ahead of time and saying, hey, I have an issue, I hurt my back and I'm using CBD or I'm using marijuana to cope, that's fine. Go get the help. We'll send you off. It's not a termination type event. You're stepping ahead before there's a testing, before there's a problem. It's saying, I need some help. And I think we talked a little bit about this beforehand with peer support and having resources available. And I know the professional firefighters have a very strong peer support program around the state. The Ohio Fire Chiefs have been working with the feds to bring some money in, and there's those classes going on right now. So if you're hearing this and you haven't taken a peer support class and you want to, go to the Ohio Fire Chiefs website, go to events, click on peer support, and get in one of those classes. We have resiliency classes, we have peer support classes. They're all free, and they're for everybody to try and get first responders prepared for issues coming up. So that's one of the resources, and I don't want to take all the time, so refer to John or Jack. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thanks for giving the shout out to our peer team. It's a dedicated group of individuals that work really hard at what they're doing with that peer program. But yeah, to just kind of talk about that a little bit. So it's open to any firefighter. We've never we don't specify for professional, volunteer, anybody, dispatchers. We kind of forget about the dispatchers, and they're the first ones answering the phone and dealing with those emergencies right off the bat. So we want to make sure we're doing what we can utilizing our resources the best we can to get that peer team out. But to the point is, our members aren't exempt from injuries, pain, being on painkillers, getting addicted to them, and then it becomes a source of pride for so many of our members that don't reach out for help. They try to self-medicate, they try to deal with it themselves, and then they get banged on a drug test or something happens and their world falls apart when, to your point, Chief, if they would have just reached out for help. And there's a ton of resources, whether it be through the fire chiefs, the firefighters. I know our website addresses it. There's clinicians you can contact if you need help. And sometimes people want to go outside their department. They just don't feel comfortable with the guy they're riding on the truck with, knowing that they're struggling. So we make sure that contact information is on our website. So if you want to talk to another firefighter in your area that understands that information's there.
So they would just get on the OAPFF website. There's contact information for other peer support firefighters. So if I didn't want to use anybody within my organization, it gives me a number to be able to call to maybe connect with another firefighter.
Yeah, OAPFF.org. On the top of the screen is peer support. Click on that, and it actually breaks it down to different parts of the state. So you can find somebody that's close to you, or if you'd rather talk to somebody across the state,
okay,
you can do that too.
And so do the individuals that are on that contact list, they go through some sort of training or how does that work?
So they've all been through some of them are actually peer instructors. We have a few peer instructors. We have a couple clinicians in our group, but they've all been through the peer support training program through the IFF. And then we provide annual continuing ed. So we have different programs throughout the year that we bring people in to educate our members on any of the latest trends or developments in peer support.
I was going to say, I think that, Rick talked about recognition, and the person coming forward. And I think that one of the things as an officer or leader of a company or in the fire service is that, don't expect them to come forward. I think that one of the ways if you're a company officer, that you really need to know who those informal leaders are in your organization, because the informal leader in your organization, hopefully it's a positive individual that's that informal leader, is going to end up and recognize it first because they're doing equipment checks in the morning with them and they find that they're off or something like that. And a lot of times that may be the first person that says to them, hey, Joe, or whoever, what's going on with you today? And that would be that lead in. And I think that, when a company officer has that relationship with those informal people, that he's going to or she's going to get that first up to be able to end up and guide them towards the resources through the upper echelon of the department. Because I don't know of a chief that immediately is going to say, that they need to be fired. I think the chiefs are all going to be compassionate to those kind of things, because I've talked to chiefs that have been in that kind of situation themselves. And so, the desire by both of our organizations and the Ohio State Firefighters, which we work with, is to get that help and salvage somebody's, mission in life.
Yeah. You don't want that to come up as far as being a termination or anything until that comes up last. And not to mention it could be too late if they didn't reach out for the help initially. Like right. You said, like there's nobody out there that doesn't want to help, that we fully are all educated enough to know that there is the possibility of that. If you have somebody off on injury, you have somebody off for an extended period of time, those are definitely reasons why we need to be following up with those individuals, making sure that they, know full well what the resources are. And then, maybe just, just making sure that the information's out there on a regular basis to all of our members, because it may not be just somebody that did suffer an injury. It could just be somebody that's suffering some things at home, and it starts by, drinking the sorrows away because it's not their personal life is kind of going, and it could be a whole gamut of different things. So is there any education on the recognition? So we talked a little bit about the recognition, and is there anything that where if I'm a person that, I'm in the fire firehouse, what am I looking for? How would I maybe pick this up to say, hey, besides just saying, hey, they're off because they didn't talk to me in the morning over coffee, is there any of these like little things that, you talk about when you try to train the lay person about, heroin users and the possibilities of looking for key components of what your kids may do. Hey, you found a spoon in their bedroom, or that's weird. Or you found these different types of things out there. That's what you would, recognize for that type of user. What would we recognize for maybe somebody that's going through an addiction of maybe it's pills or maybe it's smoking marijuana or anything?
I think one thing you want to notice, and it goes back to knowing your people, knowing the people you work with, and knowing what they've been through. So the company officer out there, they go on the calls with these firefighters and these paramedics, and they see horrendous things around all the time. And there's a lot of difficult situations, and just having those conversations. We used to go back to the coffee table and drink coffee and BS about stuff and talk about the issues that we had in front of us. Now some of the millennials, and not in a bad way, but they use their devices and they talk to their devices and they stare at them, and there's less conversation. So I think getting to know your folks, getting to understand, their families and knowing their kids and, having those conversations and caring about each other really helps to solve the problem. Because if you notice, if I notice that something's off with Jack, I would know it pretty quick talking with Jack because we've known each other for a while. And I think I would say, hey, Jack, is everything okay? Let's get a cup of coffee and talk about it. And, just recognizing those resources. But you asked a question. You said, do they train you in that? And that's what that peer support class is. It's teaching you to recognize. It's teaching you to understand what to say. Because someday you may have somebody that says, I'm done. I've reached my limit with my family and my wife, and this is it. This is my last day. I'm going to kill myself. And then what do you do? And just having had that training, you have an understanding of resources and who to call out and what to do and how to have those hard conversations, because they're never easy to say, hey, Jack, are you okay? It's a hard thing to say sometimes. So, again, knowing your people, I think, is a key in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because, we've probably all experienced, either within our departments or departments around us, to possibly where there was a first responder suicide, and the first thing that people say, well, I didn't know there was anything wrong. The family said, I didn't know there was anything wrong, and it was that point where they hit that saturation point and they said they were done. You're lucky if you talk with somebody and they say, I got a plan, because that gives you an opportunity to intercede. But when they don't share that I've got a plan, and the first response that they have is suicide, everybody's going to be caught off guard. So absolutely, that family relationship doesn't always end up and identify the issue. And so I think you got to kind of end up and look, that as a company officer or any kind of an officer after a bad event, or that if you're at visiting them at their house and you're having a beer, and all of a sudden you end up and you take your beer and say, do you recycle? And you go to the garage and there's bottles and bottles and bottles of beer in the garage that you recycle yours with. That should trigger something.
Yeah, well, don't stop by my garage, Jeff. No, but I think you brought up a really good point about recognizing these changes, and a lot of times, typically, when unfortunately we do respond to these suicides, it's always after the fact. People are like, now that you mention it, his appearance did change. He did withdraw. I did notice him doing, calling off work more than guy never used to miss work, and all of a sudden didn't really think much about it until it's too late. So I think some of those changes over time are just so gradual that, we work with them every third day. We don't really notice some of the things that we really need to keep our eye on. So back to what you talked about, probably the first part of the question was about education. I think as a fire service as a whole, we need to do better educating our members of these issues. And years ago, I probably didn't appreciate it when I first took it, but the IFF has a class. It's called Generational Differences, and it goes through all the different, Gen Xers and all that. And, at first I kind of thought, well, this is kind of hokey. I'm not sure I bought into it all the way. And then the more I've, over the years, have thought about it, it just makes perfect sense. As, a company officer in my early 50s, I don't connect sometimes with the 20-year-old that is brand new. I don't understand some of the lingo. So I don't know that I would recognize some things. But one thing I do make sure every morning when I go to work is I make sure I contact everybody in my crew and I look at them, ask them a question, and if they don't answer, or if I don't think they answer appropriately, I just kind of really try to force, like, hey, I'll joke around with them, whatever I need to do just to make sure they're okay. But I could see how it could slide through, and you wouldn't recognize it till it's too late.
But I think you did make a good point where you also have to be able to create this, environment within the firehouse that people would feel comfortable to be able to go with it. So to everybody's point that, get to know them very well, vice versa, where they know you just as well as you know them, so they feel comfortable to be able to say something, if that is the issue. So, but good. I'm glad we talked about a lot of the resources. I wanna pose another question though. And one of the things that always comes up is, well, okay, so I can't use medical marijuana, but I can go down to the store. Can I get the CBD? And or recreational marijuana or whatever? Can I use the CBD? And what effects does that have on me?
Well, I was going to say on CBD, one of the things in a prior webinar that we did, we had an attorney with us and spoke about CBD oil, and she made the point that CBD oils are not created equal, that their testing process, just like the testing process that we're talking about with marijuana, is different. And so whether it's hemp or whether it's marijuana, that at least the indications are, if you buy or seek out a CBD oil or CBD product that is considered in what's called an isolate, then the isolate means that the THC through chemistry has been removed from the hemp, from the cannabis. And then you should end up and be relatively safe. Most CBDs are classified as less than 0.3% THC. So if you don't have an isolate, you run the risk of having some THC in that product.
There's also the concern with the synthetics, Delta 8 as compared to the Delta 9, and just understanding that no matter what you take, the regulation, and Jack just said it, the regulation is not there. There's no federal oversight, so they can put whatever they want on the label. And they have companies out there, third-party vendors, that will say, oh, they have this or they have that in it, and it's less than 0.3 of the THC, but there's still THC in it. And especially when you start talking about synthetics, you don't know what you're putting in your body. So just say no. You're in a safety-sensitive position. Work with your physician to get something that's appropriate to help take care of you and get the help that you need, whether it's physical therapy or whatever it is. But yes, my recommendation would be stay away from that stuff. Until it's regulated and until you're not in a safety-sensitive position, you shouldn't be using that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, again, going back to putting your career in your hands, it makes the most sense. And why do something that's going to jeopardize that? Yeah,
we would never want to have to be able to prove it back, get denied and then prove it. I just couldn't imagine, kind of going through that. Or, if ultimately it's you had died because of whatever an event is, and now you're leaving your family to try and prove, something to be able to get any sort of benefits, and that would just be terrible.
I was going to say there's been arbitrations out there to where somebody thought that they were purchasing a CBD product that was less than that 0.3, but then when they got tested, the nanograms come back, and in a couple cases, they would come back over 15 or 28 or something like that, and they would get caught in a random drug test as a result. And of course, those levels are certainly going to be the levels that they're going to end up, and you're going to go through a discipline process.
So what other takeaways do we want to talk about as far as anything recreational marijuana, medical marijuana, anything peer support? Is there anything that we didn't cover thus far?
Well, I think that as we talk about them, we certainly realize, and hopefully with time, things will come about because, there are medicinal purposes for CBD oils and medical marijuana, and we understand, some of the process and some of the things with PTSD and stress and those kind of things, and with pain. But at this point in time, it's difficult with so many variations to end up and be in a position to where you can be certain, based upon what information that we have, that it's not going to compromise you and put you at risk.
John?
Yeah, when we had one of our initial meetings and kind of decided, landing on this would be the first of this topic we would talk about together, it really just came down to, if you need help, get it. There's lots of ways to do it outside of marijuana, and that you can't do it. So I think we've really kind of hit exactly on what we had talked about and the messages we really wanted to deliver to the firefighters and fire chiefs out there. That have open communication, make sure that you have programs in place for your employees to get help if they need it, and being accessible to them, I think is really important.
I think sounds like we're wrapping up as far as the conversation. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention alcohol as a problem in the fire service and first responders. Alcohol's been okay to drink since we were 18, or depending on your age. Some of you guys, Jack, no offense.
3-2.
3-2 beer back in 1961. But the concerns that we have and what we're seeing out there across the state and across the nation is firefighters and first responders are using alcohol to excess. And I think intoxication is the key. When you come to work, you have to be ready to go to work. And if you need help, ask for it. There was a great article in one of the magazines about a recent Detroit firefighter that had a TBI from an accident and was having a hard time coming back to work. And he ended up in therapy for his TBI and PTSD. And they used some psychedelic mushrooms, I believe, to help him through his circumstance. And he was actually able to come back to work. But the key is it's under a doctor's care. And the same goes with the other things that we've been talking about. You'll get prescribed all sorts of stuff, but you have to be good to come back to work. And if you need help, ask for it. It's one of the things that I can't say enough. Fire chiefs, firefighters out there, make sure you understand your policy. Make sure you know your folks, and just get them the help that they need. That's my ask, is that you get them the help before something bad happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, being proactive.
When you talk about policy, I think that's important because, particularly in the case of a collective bargaining agreement, that collective bargaining agreement's going to supersede that policy as to what we do in these cases. If there's not a collective bargaining agreement, then the policy is going to prevail. So, depending on where you're at in your organization, both need to be reviewed.
Yeah, and actually, with the new law, most contracts have a savings clause. So if there is new law, either side can demand a bargain. I would suggest labor management beforehand, right? Get your what you want to accomplish, and then put it in your contract or create a policy, whatever you have to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a big key takeaway here is that this ain't labor against management or management against labor, sure. Right? It's just about coming together, working together, being transparent, communicating, and understanding that the major takeaways for majority of all fire departments in the state of Ohio would be that we take a supportive role in trying to help and identify the members, and if they need help, that they ask for help early. So if you do need help, make sure you reach out. Those resources being through the OAPFF website on the peer support, being able to have somebody to be able to contact either close by or far away, or reach out to somebody within your department. But if you need help, just say something, because you'd rather have that help prior to something bad happening and then trying to justify it afterwards, because that's when it's going to be a bad day for a firefighter. So I think that that's a huge takeaway, is that this is labor and management coming together to be able to just say, if you need help, ask for it. And we're taking a supportive approach to be able to try to make sure you get the resources available. The other takeaway that I had wrote down is that, that again, just that other plug for the virtual resilience training. These are free classes that are not getting filled up, that to my understanding, and when we talk about this critical issue within it, why wouldn't we want to have our membership and ourselves taking these classes, just having the information? You may not need it today, you may not need it tomorrow, but you might need it when that new firefighter starts, or you might need it next year, and you just never know when. Just to kind of your point, John, of when you first initially took that educational course on the different generations, it didn't really hold true until okay, now I realize that
the light bulb went off.
There's a lot of valuable information in that. So
in those classes too that you were talking about, if you go to IAFF.org, it also has a pretty good description of what those classes are if you're kind of a little confused on whether or not you would want to go. And they also have a ton of online resources and classes you can take just to better educate yourself. So I would highly suggest going to that website also.
So it sounds like there is plenty of resources out there. We've led them to the water. You can't force anybody to drink, but you just gotta, continue to, be educating, be talking about it, be open and transparent. But I couldn't appreciate this more, John. I mean, this has been excellent to be able to really be, the chiefs and the union together. Yeah, Jack.
I don't think we mentioned where they go to find those classes at this point. They are free. They're available. If they go to the Ohio Fire Chiefs website, and on that website there's a link that takes you to the International Association of Firefighters to fill out that application. And there are in-person peer support classes. There are the online peer support classes, as well as the resiliency classes. So please, I mean, we've had people that have asked for classes and been turned away, and then somebody not show up, and then there was a vacancy not used. And as Rick said, the resiliency classes, we thought they would be well received, and right now I think we have a class in April that there's nobody signed up for at this point.
Well, we will, and also in addition, to kind of make it easier for the listeners, we'll take those websites and those links and we'll put them in the description of the podcast. So if you go to the description, you'll be able to just have a quick link and be able to click on it. It'll take you right to those resources if you need it. Save it somewhere on your computer, but we'll make it easy for them to be able to get it. So
great, yeah, and those classes aren't cheap. I mean, they're expensive classes. So the fact that the Ohio Fire Chiefs went out and got grant money to bring these classes to Ohio, that's a big deal. So thank you for taking that initiative and bringing that stuff to Ohio, because it can be a struggle to send people.
Like we talked about that right before this podcast started, like everything costs money.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
To be able to offer something for free, like why we wouldn't get them, take advantage of those types of things. But everything costs money, and it takes coordination, and it takes, effort to be able to get it out there and resources to do it. And so, either way, do really appreciate everybody's time. And, if you have any questions, again, that takeaway is, I should say not questions. If you have any issues, the takeaway is just ask for help, and if you need it, it's out there.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P Podcast, Premier, Professional, and Proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.